Okay, functions, this is the last thing that we did, so we are going to move on. This was the warm-up that we did in class. So go ahead and do this. Remember, you're going to want to factor, but if you aren't sure, you can check with your answers with me in class tomorrow. Okay, so moving on. All right, when we find the LCD, so we are going to find the least common denominator, and we're going to state the domain. This is something that we're always going to do, and we're going to use that least common denominator to state the domain. So first thing we're going to do, whenever we're comparing two fractions or three fractions, or we're adding and subtracting, or we're solving, we're going to use that least common denominator. That's going to help us find the domain. So the first thing we want to do here is we're comparing these two. So this semicolon just means that we're comparing the two denominators. So we are going to find the least common denominator, which means we need to find the least common multiple between 10 and 15. So the least common multiple between 10 and 15, well, we have 10, 20, 30, 40. Those are multiples. And 15 would be 15, 30, and 45, and I can already see that 30. Another way to do that would be to factor. So 2 times 5 times a cubed times b to the 5th, and then we get 3 times 5 times a. So then this is going to give us 30, because 2 times 3 times 5, that 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 5 is 30. So that gives us that least common multiple. Least common multiple is the lowest number that two numbers multiply to, the product. Okay, a cubed is going to be the part of the least common denominator because I have an a cubed in one, so I'm going to have it in the other. And b to the 6th is going to be the other part of it because I have b to the 6th in one, so I'm going to need it in both. So I'm going to need to have all those factors in there. Then the domain. The domain is going to be all real numbers such that a cannot equal 0 and b cannot equal 0. Because if I set a cubed equal to 0, I'm going to find that a cannot be 0. Okay, now we're going to compare 1 over z and 1 over z plus 6. Z cannot be factored any further, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. So if I were doing this, so the way that I do this when I'm finding an LCD is I write LCD, and then I write, oh, I have a z here. So I'm going to have that. I'm going to be multiplying. I have a z plus 6. Z plus 6 is going to be the whole thing. I don't have a z, so then that means, so I write everything that's in the first fraction, and then everything that is missing from the first one. So if this one had, like let's say it had an additional z, I wouldn't have to write it again. So then I'm going to have z plus 6. So again, each denominator is already factored, so my LCD is everything that's in the denominator in the first fraction, and then anything that's missing from the second one. So then the domain for that one, I think my face is going to cover it up. It does. The domain for this is going to be, let me move this, is going to be where z cannot equal 0. So if I set each factor, this is where you set each factor equal to 0. I can't do any further. And then z plus 6 cannot equal 0. And so I subtract 6 from both sides, and that's how I get z cannot equal negative 6. Okay, let's move on. So the first thing I want to do is factor both of these. So when I factor that, I've got a difference of squares in the first one, and a box and diamond in the second one. So I got to find the factors of 16 that add up to 8. Well, that's 4. So then difference of squares for the first one, and then m plus 4. Another way that you could write this is you could just write m plus 4 times m plus 4. Okay, so if I were finding the LCD, I'm going to write down everything that's in the first one. M plus 4, m minus 4. Then in the second one, I already have an m plus 4. Oh, but I have this additional one. So I'm going to have to write it again. So this one doesn't, it's not here twice. So I'm going to have to write it one more time. That way I have everything in there. So then I have all of that. So another way that you could write that is m plus 4 squared, because it's there twice, times m minus 4. And then we end up with the domain being all real numbers, and the excluded values are where m cannot equal 4 and m cannot equal negative 4. All right, so here is one with 3 different ones that we're going to be comparing. I need to factor all of them. Well, if you did the warm-up, then you already did the first one. We factored the factors of 1 that add up to negative 2 are negative 1 and negative 1. So we're going to get x minus 1 and x minus 1. So if I were writing an LCD, the first thing I would do is write everything that's in that first fraction. X minus 1, X minus 1. Everything that's there. Second one, what are the factors of 3 that add to negative 4? Well, that's going to be negative 1 and negative 3. Well, I already have at least one x minus 1, so I'm going to go ahead and not write it again, but I don't have this x minus 3. So I'm going to have to write x minus 3. Okay, and then I can factor out of 4 and get x minus 1 times 4, or 4 times x minus 1. I already have at least one x minus 1 written down, so then I'm just going to throw the 4 at the end because that's what's missing. So then my LCD is going to be that 4 times x minus 1 squared times x minus 3. Now I want to take the x minus 1 and the x plus 3. We're using the zero product property. The reason why we're doing that is we never want our denominator to have 0, because then it's going to be undefined. Anytime we have a 0, friends don't let friends divide by 0. So we cannot have a denominator that equals 0. So what I'm trying to figure out is what value of x would make this 0? Well, 1. So if I made x, we say x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 1, I'm going to get 4 times 1 minus 1, which is 0, and 0 squared is 0. And then I get 1 minus 3, which is negative 2. Well, 4 times 0 is 0, so then that makes 0 times negative 2, 0. So it can't be positive 1. Well, what if we made it positive 3? So then I end up with, I'm going to cross all of that, I get 4 times 3 minus 1 is just 2 squared, and then 3 minus 3 is 0. So then I get so we do order of operations, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 0 is 0. So that's why we're finding every possible value in those factors that are going to make it 0. That's how the zero product property works. That's what it says. That if one of them is 0, then it makes the entire thing 0. So we just have to figure it out. And that is why we do not have to worry about what the 4 is. Because the 4 is going to be 4 no matter what. We just need to figure out what are the values of the variables that are going to make things 0. All right, so if you have any questions, please come to class with those questions. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you all tomorrow. We're going to be adding and subtracting for the rest of the week. Next week, we're going to be solving. So we're going to be using these rules to help us solve. After that, we're reviewing, and the test is on December 21st. If you are not going to be in school on the 21st, you need to make arrangements to take this test early. Hope you have a great day.